Okay, today is August 14th, 2024. I am Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard, and you're watching The Pipeline. We've got a great show for you today, but joining us, as usual, is Western Standard opinion editor Nigel Hannaford.
Good to be here, Derek.
Always good to have you. And Western Standard senior Alberta columnist Cory Morgan.
Always a pleasure.
Man, we get so much fan mail from old ladies that just love you.
Oh, you're going to get some stuff from today's show.
Oh, yeah?
Won't be so loving. Well, it'll be fun.
Oh, well, my favorite fan mail is always like hate mail. Like
yeah, well, you're going to
fan mail I like. Like any one of you who wants to write me a nice email, that's great. But if you write me like hate mail, I love it. I love hate mail. It's great.
I understand.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got a good show. We're going to be talking about, everybody knows the, for lack of a better term, the hermaphroditical female, male, whatever you want to call her, boxer who won his gold medal in weight class at the Olympics. She is suing her critics. This is really getting annoying, keeping pronouns straight here, or not straight. Suing Elon Musk, J.K. Rowlings, maybe soon Donald Trump. Essentially, the whole, the 3/4 of the planet that thought that this was not fair sport, suing everyone. So we're going to be talking about that. We'll be bringing in the Western Standard's Jen Hodgson for that, who's been doing all of our Olympic coverage here. We're also going to be bringing in a new Western Standard reporter, Jared Yager, our British Columbia reporter on the ground there. We're going to be talking to him about the election race heating up there. Polls showing the BC Conservatives leaving the BC United / BC Liberals in the dust, becoming the overwhelming opposition powerhouse to take on the NDP government. Very interesting news coming out that this fall likely will be introduced a new Alberta Bill of Rights, beefing up the rights of Albertans, Alberta citizens vis-a-vis for the provincial government. And it's at least has the potential to be a lot spicier than some weak sauce document like the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. One topic near and dear to Cory's heart, the people of Banff have just voted in a referendum on a, not the biggest issue in the world, but a very important issue for them, closing down Banff Avenue and turning it into a pedestrian walkway, and how the citizens there overturned it in a referendum, and really kind of a template for how citizens can fight City Hall and win, something that's hard to do, but quite possible if you put your mind to it. Okay, so we're going to bring in, to begin with, Jen Hodgson, Western Standard reporter right out of our Calgary newsroom here. Thanks for joining us, Jen.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
So Jen has been leading the Western Standard's coverage of all things Olympic. And, I mean, try as we might to report on pole vaulters colliding with other poles and funnier stories from the Olympics. The big story that's really dominated the Olympic coverage, at least for the Western Standard's readers, has been the Algerian hermaphroditical fighter who won the gold medal in women's boxing in her weight class. Another, we believe, hermaphroditical fighter also winning the gold in his or her weight class at the Olympics as well. So two of the, probably 4 or 5 different weight classes in the women's, all going to people with XY male chromosomes. So Jen, maybe just set it up for us. The Algerian boxer here, not happy with the criticism he or she has received, and is, I think, suing about half the planet now, right?
That's right. So Khelif, the XY chromosome boxer from Algeria, has this week launched a lawsuit against an ambiguous X. So what that, and I'm not talking about the X social media platform. So what that means is that it opens up avenues for French investigators to essentially scour social media to point out anyone who has gone against Keyleth in this way, as Keyleth is claiming, saying that it's online harassment, it's hate speech to be bringing up the topic of this person's gender when it comes to his performance in the Paris 2024 Olympic women's boxing competitions. So he's launched this lawsuit. Yes, Rowling, Musk are named, and we have a comment from Keyleth's lawyer saying that Donald Trump is going to factor into that investigation as well as you say, so good half of social media.
Start with you, Nigel. I'm not sure where they draw the line in a lawsuit like this. I don't understand the French court's judicial system. It's a very different system that we have. In the British tradition, it's adversarial. In the French tradition, the judge is also kind of a semi-prosecutor in a way, taking part in the proceedings, asking questions. I'm not sure if that extends to the civil or if it's just the criminal, but this sounds odd that it's a lawsuit, but the French government is becoming an active participant in it. I don't understand how that system works, but it seems to me if she's essentially suing people for hurting his or her feelings on Twitter, he or she would have to sue 3/4 or more of planet Earth who saw someone who was clearly not meant for the female boxing category clobbering women in boxing and very obviously winning the gold medal as a result. I don't know. It seems like a hell of a can of worms to open, but where would this person draw the line at people who haven't offended her and therefore should be liable under French law?
Hard to say, isn't it? I mean, I don't understand the French legal system either. I stopped at Napoleonic Code, which I gather governs things in Quebec. 200 years of history in that. As for where she stops, I dare say that she'll draw the line at people who have deep pockets. Clearly there's two things going on here. One is a financial cash grab. If she can get a judgment against J.K. Rowling or Elon Musk, they certainly have the ability to pay. And the other thing is that what do you do after you have won a gold medal at the Olympics to stay relevant? She's now attached herself to a cause. And I got to say, I actually had sympathy, and I believe that you did as well. Mm-hmm. You did have sympathy. This
is not a big, beefy guy who put on a dress to go fight women. This is someone in a genuinely regrettable situation.
According to the narrative, she was born this way. Well, what's the person supposed to do other than play with the cards they're dealt with? Mm-hmm. But my sympathy dried up the moment when she said, right, now I'm going to sue the pants off everybody who ever said anything unkind about me, because that's now taking it into a vengeful, punitive attitude and leads me to suspect that there may be an agenda, an ideological agenda behind this, which I had been prepared to concede maybe wasn't present before.
Cory, again, some of these questions are just dealing with the French foreign system, which is foreign to us in more than just the strictly legal sense. But, she's suing non-French citizens. Perhaps French and EU law have the ability to sue people who have hurt your feelings and or who you disagree with. We have human rights commissions, which kind of do that in Canada. They make cash awards to people, but I don't know. How would she, even if she was able to win in court against Elon Musk and J.K. Rowlings and Donald Trump, how the hell would she get the money? Like, I'm sure they're not going to cut a check under any circumstance. And I highly doubt that maybe the UK will deport J.K. Rowlings for hurting feelings, but the United States is not. Can you imagine Donald Trump as president of the United States being asked to sign his own extradition to go to France to pay?
Well, maybe she'll show up at their door and beat the hell out of him as a collector. I mean, she's a pretty tough gal.
Well, she's shown up. He or she's shown the ability to beat up women. I'd be doubtful she'll be that successful against. Well, I mean, she could go beat up J.K. Rowlings.
I don't think I'd be that tough with her.
No?
She looks like an athletic, skilled boxer. Mm-hmm. the bigger worry.
So you wouldn't date her?
No. Well, aside from the collections, anyways, and the legal aspect, what I'm most concerned about is it's gagging a conversation that needs to be had. I mean, it's one that we never imagined we'd ever have 20 years ago. But the only, with so many questionable things, Leah Thomas, a clear man, going out swimming, wiping women off the course, things like that, with a clear male advantage.
At least he wasn't beating women, but yes.
No, and the closest line we could draw was saying, well, look, one thing that's immutable is the chromosomes. There's the male and there's female. There's distinctive advantages that come from having male chromosomes and, changes with a woman. And if we're going to wipe that out, if we can't talk about that, then there will be outright men cutting off their nuts and berries even, but they still got the X, Y going on and could go into women's sports and do that. We have to, even if it's unfair, if she was born as an unusual, circumstance, the bottom line is she had male chromosomes. I mean, a person born with a club foot's probably never going to be a top marathon runner either. Just the way you're born sometimes isn't fair. But we have to have this conversation, and we can't have her shutting down discussion with this lawsuit.
Jen, what's maybe you want to flesh out the story a bit more? Has there been any response from J.K. Rowling's? And for those who don't know, she's the author of the Harry Potter series. Any response from J.K. Rowling's or Elon Musk or potentially Donald Trump to the Algerian boxer's threat to sue them for hurting her feelings?
So we haven't had any acknowledgement from those three named individuals yet, but a couple minutes ago, Derek, you were asking about how this could be allowed transatlantically. So how in the US could there be laws that this actually could even be a legal matter for American individuals being sued by French prosecutors on behalf of an Algerian athlete? So as Variety reported, and that's who did the exclusive interview with Keylif's lawyer, and so it was reported that actually the US already has offices in place that work in partnership with international offices to combat online hate. So it does look like this lawsuit can go forward based on those grounds, that there's a partnership already established. And therefore, as the lawyer said, Keylif can target personalities overseas.
Yeah. It'd be pretty funny if they sued Trump while Trump is president. I would imagine whatever treaties are in place allowing Trump to be sued for hurting an Algerian's feelings while they competed in France, I have a feeling that treaty gets torn up pretty damn quick.
That's right. It's quite a bold move to file a lawsuit about online hate speech against someone who is running to be the next president and has already been president.
Yeah, also going after the world's richest man.
Right.
J.K. Rowling's arguably the most successful author since Moses.
Right. And you know what, Derek? So we actually see these claims made in the lawsuit, and it comes following images that surfaced after Keylif won his medal after the women's boxing match. And Keylif, an Algerian, right? So coming from a Muslim country where there are extremely strict laws about conduct between men and women, and also how a woman presents herself in public, what she wears, her proximity to men, and how she behaves. So there's footage that has been circulating on social media of Keylif hoisted up on the soldiers or on the shoulders of his trainers. And in that moment, the trainer has his hand all over Keylif's upper thighs. We have other trainers coming in and patting Keylif on the waist. Keylif has a bare head where he's wearing a tank top, and we don't see that kind of gender norm based on someone's sex in a Muslim country like Algeria that would require someone who presents as a woman to actually present as a woman, then covering up her head and of course not being sitting up on a man's shoulders.
Yeah, so, well, you can see from that footage, very much at least being treated like one of the boys by some of the boys from a country not known for its less than feminist attitudes towards women.
Right. And for contrast, there's another video I've seen on social media of a female Algerian boxer training, and she is wearing a headscarf. She's fully covered in her upper body, and she's training in the gym. And it's juxtaposed with a video of Kiev training. And Kiev is just wearing a tank top. He's bareheaded. And it's just not the way that a female Algerian Muslim would present herself.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Jen. Appreciate all your coverage of this story.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to bring in the Western Standard's Jared Yager now. Jared Yager is a new, very fresh reporter coming to the Western Standard, comes to us from the Post-Millennial, based in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. Jared, welcome to your first time on the pipeline here. You've got a story out, an exclusive poll conducted for the Western Standard, showing that the BC Conservatives are continuing to vacuum up whatever crumbs are left of voter support from the BC United / BC Liberals, as well as some of the other parties. Give us a breakdown of the poll.
Okay, so basically that poll, it was conducted in July, and just getting the numbers here. Yeah, among the 804 respondents, 37% said they'd vote for the NDP, and for the Conservatives, it wasn't much less than that. And that's been mirrored in another poll that just came out a couple of days ago from Leger, where, yeah, basically the Conservatives and NDP are neck and neck. So any suggestion that BC United / Liberals, as we have to call them now, are in the race at all is just out of the question. And you can see they're starting to get desperate. You know, a couple of days ago, they brought out the tax cuts. And I was talking with John Rustad about that, the Conservative leader. And he said, you know, it's easy for a party that's in single digits in the polls to be able to promise all kinds of things they know they'll never have to deliver. And so, yeah, as of right now, it's a two-party race, and the Conservatives just keep on eating up support from both the NDP and the BC United.
Well, you know, they changed their name to BC United, Corey, but they've dropped in the polls since. So they've lost the right entirely to the BC Conservatives. I think what little pittance of support they have left is kind of in the center. So they've actually kind of more or less reverted to the name BC Liberals, trying to maybe capitalize on some of the anemic federal Liberal support left in British Columbia. I think their official name is still BC United, but they've asked BC Elections British Columbia to have them listed on the ballot as BC United / BC Liberals. If you were advising Kevin Falcon right now, and I got to start, at some point it's like, you know, stop kicking him. He's dead already. But they're still running. They'll be on the ballot with a full slate. I'm willing to bet $20 right now that this is the last election that the BC Liberals have a full slate of candidates at this point. But if you were advising Kevin Falcon, would you advise him to maybe double down on the older BC Liberal brand to try and maybe recast it as the middle party? And, you know, the federal Liberals are on track for 0 seats in British Columbia right now, but those are bigger federal ridings. Right now, BC United, BC Liberals are on track for 0 seats in all probability. Do you think they're better positioned, rebranding themselves as, instead of the not NDP party of the broad center and right, recasting themselves, as like the moderate center left? Like,
I don't think he can try and recast himself. I mean, that's where he buggered up in the first place. You had a brand, and it was certainly sinking due to your actions, and rebranding only made it worse. But making a third effort just adds to, as Jared was saying, another indication of desperation. Doubling down, I mean, to be honest, I would think they should be at a point where you should be saying fold the tent for the sake of the province and quickly see if you can. I know it's not going to happen. I mean, they'll go down on their pride rather than do such a move. But I don't know what he can do anymore. I mean, you know, all the way back to when they rejected Aaron Gunn's run for the leadership, even, they lost small C Conservative support. They're not going to get it back. they could corner centrist liberal thinking of the old liberal name, but that's not nearly enough to win a seat anywhere. Not in our system. I mean, with first past the post, they're just going to get annihilated everywhere they go. But they could still be a spoiler, and that's what a lot of people are concerned about right now.
Well, that's where I want to go with you, Nigel. I forget who it was. But there was a professor at one of the universities of British Columbia who wrote an article about this. The BC Liberals, now rebranded BC United, now rebranded BC United Liberals. The entire point of the party was that they are the non-NDP coalition. There's the NDP over here, and they are this ultra mega big tent of everybody who's not a hardcore socialist. And so you had moderate federal liberals all the way over to hardcore right-wing conservatives in this one giant big tent. That's completely gone. They've lost that to the BC Conservatives. The raison d'etre of the party is to keep the NDP from power. That can now be best achieved by dissolving the party. But that requires an admission of defeat and to not even go down swinging. Do you think? I know we're not British Columbians, but wouldn't that be the logical thing now if the very existence of BC United / Liberals is to keep the NDP from power? They can best serve that now by either dissolving the party or at least throwing in the towel on this election and not running candidates.
Well, your analysis is spot on. I lived in BC for 25 years, so I've got a bit of a recollection of how things were. And of course, the BC United was the BC Liberals, and the BC Liberals were the social credit party that dominated BC politics for something like 40 years. And very successfully, by the way. It was a tightly run ship. There were 20 years of balanced budgets. And I think people just got tired of them and tired of the same old faces. So they tried the NDP in 1975. That lasted 18 months. They tried them again in the early 1990s. Oh, no, we don't want to do that anymore. And they rebranded as the Liberals and came back with Gordon Campbell. And that went very well. But there's been a lot of demographic changes in BC. And people always want something for nothing. So the NDP appeal was very strong. Now, to the point of your question, should they just disband? Because you're right, they were always anybody but the NDP, and that was their card back in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, even in the early years of this century. Yes, of course they should. Will they? Of course not, because personal pride gets in the way. And unfortunately, the danger of them splitting the vote with people who are either sentimentally attached to the old party or who simply haven't really been keeping up, and I have never heard of a conservative party. That's a real danger.
Jared, sticking with this topic. So I don't know if you're familiar the column that ran, I think it ran in the Post Media Papers about, that the BC United Liberals should just throw in the towel on this. I'm not expecting them to. I mean, if the BC United Liberals stood for something other than keeping the NDP from power, well, then there'd be a good cause for them to run if they were just, the Liberals of BC, a traditional liberal party. If they were, say, a more moderate version of the NDP. Well, they actually, I suppose they are a more moderate version of the NDP. But the raison d'etre isn't ideological. It is purely to keep the NDP from power. The Greens have an ideological raison d'etre for existence, and that's environmental extremism. BC, I think it's the easiest province in the country to start a political party. BC's got something like 100 odd political parties, at least on paper. But what's been the response of Kevin Falcon and the United Liberals to calls for them to essentially step down and let the Conservatives contest the election in their place?
I've pretty much seen no indication that that's even in their minds at all. And Yeah, so that's not something I think we're going to see. But there have been increasing calls from the Conservative side for them to do just that. For example, today, Gavin Dew, he was named as the candidate for the BC Conservatives in Kelowna Mission. And he said in his press release that everyone's tired of the drama and it's time to put BC first, not egos or old party allegiances. And I think that's what a lot of people are feeling right now is, Kevin, you're way down in the polls. There's no way to make it up. It's time to just work with John and, fulfill your obligation to get the NDP out of power.
I think, Corey, this would be just particularly impossible for Kevin Falcon to do because he's the one who kicked John Rudstad out of caucus. I think, what was it, over his views on global warming or something. Yeah. And I mean, it's not like John Rudstad was just like some outsider coming in, like when Daniel Smith was leading the Wild Rose. This was a guy who was in his caucus on his team and he kicked him out. I mean, there's just no way even a very humble man could bring himself to do this. There's just no way.
Falcon can't come into the room with the others. I mean, and again, he's shown no indication of it. But if he said, that's it, we're done, we're backing out, I think he would just take his ball and go home. He's not going to get into the same room with Rustad and work together. That's just not in the cards. Well,
Nigel, there was talks to negotiate, if not a merger, at least some kind of non-aggression pact, so they don't split the vote. But the BC Liberal or United Liberal proposal was outrageously naive. It would guarantee the BC Liberals get to keep all of their incumbent seats, which happen to be the most right-leaning Conservative seats in BC. The BC Conservatives stand to win every single last current BC United Liberal seat, and they were asking the BC Conservatives to just completely vacate that. I don't think there was ever a way the math would work for them to do this.
Well, those kinds of arrangements always look great to people who are outside politics. Mm-hmm. Well, if you are inside politics, and that's your seat, mm-hmm. well, then it's a terrible idea. Of course it is.
Yeah.
I obviously wish Mr. Rustad all success, but he is going to have his hands full if he wins. Because the NDP in the last 4 years has run up the provincial debt. Maybe Jared has got the exact numbers, but it's an astonishing amount of money that the NDP has borrowed in just 4 years. And getting the program spending under control, never mind making any serious attempt to bring down that debt, is going to challenge any party that wants to take it on. And by the way, they're all promising to get rid of income tax in BC for 60% of BC taxpayers. Great idea, but I cannot see how it's going to work. So this could turn out to be a poisoned chalice.
Well, Jared, I'll kick it back to you to finish up this segment. What's next on the campaign trail? What can we expect from the big campaigns?
Well, I think you're going to see the BC Conservatives really doubling down on their successes, and the NDP just kind of riding on the support they already have. I don't think they're going to be bringing in any new voters. And in that poll that was conducted for the Western Standard, it was interesting because the BC Conservatives, they captured 50% of the voters who voted BC Liberals back in 2020. But they also got 17% of those who voted for the BC NDP and 21% of those who voted for the BC Green Party. So I don't see the other two parties gaining any more support, but the Conservatives, the only direction to go is up from here.
All right. Well, Jared, thank you for joining us on the pipeline here today. Get back to work. You're doing good stuff out there. All right. Well, let's bring it a little closer to home here for us at Western Standard World Headquarters. This fall, we are expecting the Alberta's United Conservative Government to introduce an update. Well, it says it's update, but it's pretty much a whole new Alberta Bill of Rights. A lot of people are not quite aware that there's an Alberta Bill of Rights. There is. It's largely been subsumed since the Charter came into effect 1982, alongside the Constitution Act 1982. But it's reportedly might include some very spicy elements. Jason Markusoff at the CBC Calgary CBC reporting. There's different groups. Some called the Black Hat Gang, which is no, that's not a cowboy posse, but Southern Alberta, and they wear black hats like one. And some other groups within the UCP are pressing for the inclusion of things they go well beyond some mushy document like the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to give much more robust rights to Albertans. Nigel, why don't you cue it up?
So the thing with the Bill of Rights, obviously it's an aspirational document. Anything put out by the provinces is subservient to federal legislation. So you can't, as a province, declare a right to something which is expressly forbidden by federal law. However, from the point of view of the politics of the province, it is a good thing for a leader to reflect prevailing sentiment within the province, and a declaration of rights in any document issued by the provincial government, passed through the legislature, informs a lot of people of things they need to be informed about. For example, judges. If you have a clear statement on stand your ground, which is one of the things that there's speculation around.
It's among the rights of self-defense.
Yeah, I don't personally see that going the whole distance, but the very fact that people are even talking about it in a province where a number of families living in remote areas have suddenly found themselves confronted by people trying to steal their property or even threatening them personally. A lot of people are interested in that idea that you should.
I'm particularly interested in it.
So, okay, all right. So now you have the province coming out and making a statement about standing your ground, perhaps. I don't know what's in this any more than anybody else. Then that tells the police and it tells the judiciary that we actually care about people, and we are not just automatically going to assume that criminals are going to come first. There is a talk, for example, about a right to refuse medical treatment. Well, clearly there are a lot of us who were highly skeptical of what the federal government and our own Alberta Health Services were really trying to do during the COVID crisis. And it became an extremely personal issue for people who said either you get the jab or you get out the door. This is, and ultimately, the people who said, it's probably not that safe and probably not that effective. We don't know about the safety thing completely yet, but we certainly found out that there was no protection against transmitting or receiving COVID. So, people had a right to be skeptical. And if the province is going to give people a right to say, I'm skeptical, no thanks, then that's going to be, in the first case, a popular move politically. And secondly, actually, personally, I think that's the right stance to take.
So a lot of people don't understand this, but every province has a constitution. Now, in the United States, state constitutions are written, formal codified documents, like the Canadian federal. Canada has a mixed kind of hybrid constitution, unwritten parts coming from the Westminster tradition, combined with some American parts that are written and codified, beginning with the British North America Act, 1867, updated several times, most notably 1982 with the Constitution Act. But the provinces also have their own constitutions, subject, within the federal one as well. But the provincial constitutions are, I believe, all unwritten. Perhaps Quebec's got some exceptions to that, but
they certainly behave as though they have their own constitution.
Well,
and this actually goes to the point of being declarative. They have made it clear how they view the world, and that's a message to the rest of Canada.
So most, if not all, provinces do have their own bills of rights, but they all kind of took a back burner to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms for the Constitution Act 1982 and Pierre Trudeau. But that, the Charter leaves out, Cory, some very notable rights. Freedom of speech is not as robust as in the United States. It's freedom of expression, but using mealy-mouthed Canadian language like within reasonable grounds in a freedom democratic society, which leaves a pretty big hole to drive a truck through and violating all sorts of free speech rights. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness gives a lot more protections, arguably, around bodily autonomy. Certainly the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. And I'll be surprised. I want your input on this, Cory. I'll be surprised if that makes it, but there is a lot of movement to include a right to bear arms and to protect yourself and your property in the new Bill of Rights. Now, that would be positively revolutionary by Canadian terms. I mean, if we were to have an Alberta Bill of Rights with and also the right against excessive taxation. Now, that could be read different ways, but I would imagine that between your income tax, your sales tax, property taxes, maybe we cap it all at 50% of your income, which I think people would say that should be enough. If God asked for 10%, the government should be happy with 50. These things would be positively revolutionary. What do you think the chances are some of these I think we're going to get the right to refuse medical, around vaccines and medical treatments. Firearms, self-defense, excessive taxation. What do you think the chances are that they would do something that, for lack of a better term, ballsy?
It's hard to say. They might put in property rights. That's another one that the Charter is quite weak on.
I think we're going to get
enjoyment of property. And when you get into property rights, then maybe we could expand a little further on how far is your right to defend that property. But as we said, it's aspirational. I mean, this is drawing lines in the sand is what it is. And saying this is what we would like to see in Alberta. But we also know this won't last any farther than the first federal court challenge.
Well, no, not necessarily. It's applicable to provincial statute, not to federal law, but to provincial statute. It would be applicable. So this would have real world implication, not nearly as real world as if, say, this was amending the federal Charter of Rights and Freedoms, but this would have real world application within provincial statute.
Within provincial statute. But again, it depends on where you're going with it. If you said there's a stand your ground law, that's fine, but I think it's going to be a flimsy defense when you get pulled in front of the federal court afterwards.
Yeah.
But at least it's showing where the province came from on it. And it says we are different. We want to stand up for our own rights that way. I mean, realistically, we know a lot of this is to make sure that some of those factions within the party feel they're being represented, that their voices are being heard, and that the province is taking it seriously, even if it might not withstand a federal, challenge all the way to the final end of things. It's showing the province is doing everything in their power to protect their right to avoid being coerced into a medical procedure they don't feel comfortable with or feel that they shouldn't have any right to defend themselves or property. So it'll be interesting to see how far they want to go. I think the party's probably doing internals like crazy to see how little they can get away with without poking into hornets' nests, but how much they're going to need to do to keep the floor of the convention happy.
Certainly, property rights will be a very popular one. I mean, before she was ever in politics, Danielle Smith,
that was her thing.
Was property rights.
Oh, she would like the Alberta Property Rights Association or something.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact name, but
certainly use them.
That was her thing.
Yes,
and that was kind of early Wild Rose parties. Kind of as it was taking off when she was coming in, succeeding Paul Henry.
And with a right to firearm ownership, it may not withstand the ultimate federal assault, but it's certainly like a tank obstacle in an advance. You got to get around it first.
We're going to make them work for it.
It gives you, it makes them work for it. So,
well, God bless them if they're willing to go out this far. Politicians tend to be pretty, I should say, successful politicians are risk averse. But yeah, it's something. We'll see. Okay, in the time we've got left here, we're going to get to something you wrote about, Cory. So, town of Banff, was it yesterday?
Monday, a couple days ago, yeah.
Okay, just the other day, had a referendum on the issue of turning Banff. Anyone watching who's been to Banff, you maybe didn't even know it's called Banff Avenue, but the main road straight through Banff. I mean, it's worse traffic than downtown Calgary or Edmonton. It's pretty terrible to get through sometimes, but that beautiful street, I guess the mayor and council wanted to turn it into a permanent pedestrian road. I don't live there, but as someone who likes to visit from time to time, I like being able to drive. But anyway, there was a referendum on it, Cory, and you wrote a column, almost like a how-to guide, using Banff as an example, but how citizens can rebel against mayors and councils that get out of their lane.
Yeah, and it was a good effort. Like, part of this was Banff citizens determining their destiny, not the local media, not the tourists even. I mean, if you go to it, it's kind of nice. You can walk down the street, you can hit the stores, there's the patios. I grew up in Banff, though, and you got to remember the citizens have a different outlook. And if you don't know that town, Banff Avenue, even if it was congested while open, was 2 lanes on each side, and it's the main artery. It's the only avenue to get to the south end of town.
Yeah.
When they closed it, if you go to the side streets on the side, they're narrow, they're residential, they're terrible, and anybody trying to get to the Banff Springs Hotel, the administration offices, anything, were forced onto that. It was putting
impossible.
It was putting locals through misery. But what's great is, even though the mayor and council we're offside with the locals utilize the means they have in the Municipal Government Act. It's buried in there and it's dry. You can petition. You get 10% of the voters signing that petition. They have 2 choices: repeal the bylaw or put it to a vote. And the local government still fought it. They forced it all the way to the local vote. And the citizens said, that's it. It's out. And now they have no choice. They have to get rid of that bylaw. But Albertans should be paying attention. Any town can do this. Every town can do this. There's limitations, and it's a really boring section of the Municipal Governments Act. You can't get rid of every tax increase or every rezoning, but there are a lot of bylaws you could conceivably get rid of with just 10% of the vote. Like Calgary's bag bylaw, for example. If the council had still been fighting that and everything, actually the citizens could have gotten that through perhaps and taken it out. It's more reasonable in small towns, though.
10% is reasonable enough to get in Banff. I mean, you and a dozen buddies can go out for a weekend. You can get 10%.
Potentially,
to do that in
if it's a hot
Calgary,
enough issue.
that's over 100,000 people.
Yes, so
you
the
just can't
logistics
do it.
aren't there, but it certainly could put some of those elected municipal officials on notice that, hey, you've got to be responsible to us between elections too. And I just think it's fantastic, and I hope to see more towns doing that when it's stupid laws, anyways.
There are so many.
Nigel, lessons for I'm not sure what the municipal government acts are like outside of Alberta, but I think certainly lessons for people outside of Banff across the rest of Alberta when municipalities get out of their lane like this.
And they do. The problem with there's a couple of problems. People who like to interfere with things are the ones who usually put themselves forward for municipal office. Everybody thinks, oh, well, it's a public service. And for some, perhaps it is. More, however, are people who have a thing. They want bicycle lanes, or they want more flower pots, or they want people to not have paper bags, or they want to close Banff Avenue. They're cause people, and when they are elected, they never tell you the whole agenda. They just tell you what they want you to hear, and well, let them go do it then. But the rules are made by the people who show up, and this the mechanism, the plebiscite, is what the citizen has to have. It's a last resort after you've left it too late to really examine the candidates and you're stuck with somebody you don't like. At least you can do that.
All right. Well, we're going to put a pin in it there, gentlemen. Thank you. And thank all of you for joining us today in the middle of our beautiful Western summer. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, stop freeloading, open up your wallet, and support one of the only free media outlets left in Canada. The Western Standard is one of, among significant media outlets, you can count them on one hand, that don't take the federal Liberals media bailout package. For only $10 a month or $100 a year, you'll get unlimited access to all Western Standard content and be supporting one of the last bastions of free press left in Canada. Thank you very much for joining us today, and God bless. You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month or $99 a year.